Hello and welcome to the LIMS portal training. We're going to discuss 4 things. The first thing that we're going to discuss is how to search for and create new patients in the system. The second thing we're going to discuss is how to log in samples and assign patients to those samples. And we're going to go through various scenarios of how to log in samples. The third thing that we'll discuss is how to send samples to the laboratory, generate manifests, print labels. And the fourth thing we'll discuss is how to search for patients and reprint manifests and labels if needed. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to log into the LIMS environment. You can see the environment takes me to a blank screen over here in the middle, and on the right you will see a notifications menu. The notifications menu has 2 applications that you may access. The first application is the Clinical Submitter Login application. This is the application where you will do the majority of your work, especially searching for and creating for patients, logging in samples, and sending samples to the laboratory. My Results Review is the application you will use to search for results and reprint manifests and labels and check on the status of samples. To begin, let us open the Clinical Submitter Login application. You'll notice that the application opens with the data being completely blank. If samples were actively being logged, you would see those samples in this data grid. You can minimize the notifications menu by clicking on the pin, and that will take the notifications menu away. To bring the notifications menu back, you just click on the bell up here in the right corner, and you can click on the bell again to make the notifications menu go away. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to search for and create new patients. So to search for a patient, you're going to click on this button, Search Patient. This dialog box will appear with a list of available search criteria that you can use to find a patient. You'll notice here next to the first name, last name, and EHS patient ID, there is an L. An L is a like operator, so that if I were going to search for a patient, I can search for patients where the first name contains the letter C and the last name contains Evans. Down here at the bottom, I have the option to click on Count. Count lets me know how many records would be returned based on my search criteria. So here, when I selected Count, you see that we have 18 records that would be returned. I can use this as a useful tool to determine whether or not I need to refine my search or expand my search based on the records that are returned. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the patients that are returned based on this search by clicking on the search button directly. Now keep in mind, you do not have to use the count button. You can just search directly to pull the data. Once search is selected, you'll see the list of available patients that matched your search criteria. The patient information contains the address and phone and patient ID, date of birth, gender. If the patient you wish to create does not exist in this list, you can close the form either by clicking OK or Cancel. Add a new patient, because that patient did not exist in the list, I'm going to click on Add New. When I click on Add New, the following dialog box will appear. All of the fields in red are required. So I am going to complete all of this information. And again, the fields in red are required. And I am tabbing through these fields to complete the information. Once I have filled out all of the information provided, I will click the Save button. I can confirm that the patient has been added to the database just by clicking on the Search button again, confirming the additional record that was created at the bottom. Once I've created the patient in the system, I can close this menu, and that is how we search for and create new patients in the system. The patient can now be used to log in samples into the laboratory for that patient. The next thing that we are going to discuss is how to log in samples into the system. To log in a sample, you're going to first come over here to the Add button on the left. Click on the Add button. And the first thing you'll see is this menu to select the appropriate test plan. A test plan is equal to an OPH program, so you'll see when I open up the drop-down box, I select the appropriate OPH program. When I select the program, in this case I'm choosing reproductive health, you'll see a list of available tests that I can order under that program. You can order as many panels as you'd like at once. I'm going to start small and just order one panel. So I've ordered the CTGC panel. Over here on the right, you will see the list of tests that are available to order under that panel. Once I've selected my panel or panels, I can click OK, and I will be prompted with the next dialog box. The next dialog box allows me to enter in the patient information and the submitter information for the sample that I'm creating. So I'm going to enter in the first and last name of the patient that I just created in the database. After I enter in the first and last name of the patient, the system will perform a search to find any matches in the database that match the first and last name. So here I'm going to select the sample, the patient that I just created, and click OK. Now you can see that that patient and all of the information pertaining to that patient have been completed in the remaining fields. The next thing that I will do is select the submitter and submitter information. Now, if you only belong to one health unit or clinic, you'll notice that the submitter name and the submitter ID have been completed for you. If you belong to more than one clinic, like I do, you will see that these two fields are blank. Regardless of whether or not you belong to one health unit or multiple health units, you will be required to complete the primary contact person information and ordering physician name. To complete the information for all four of these fields, you need to click on this blue button with the 3 dots or an ellipsis button, and you'll be prompted with the following dialog box. You can first select your submitter, and you'll need to select a reporting contact and a physician contact. So you'll notice here in the list of available contacts that I have a reporting contact and a physician contact that have been default selected for me. If I need to select one, I will check these boxes. Once I've selected my reporting contact and my physician contact, click OK, you'll notice that my reporting contact is completed in the primary contact person field, and my ordering physician name is completed in the physician contact is completed in the ordering physician name field. The primary contact person, or the reporting contact, is the contact used to determine how the reports will be sent back to the submitter. Now, the third thing that I can do on this form is enter in the number of samples. In this case, if I am going to do two separate source collections for CTGC, I can enter in a value of 2 here for the number of samples, and the system will create 2 samples containing this patient and submitter information. I will click OK. As you can see, the 2 records have been created and are listed below in the data grid. The sample I have highlighted over here on the right, you can see the CTGC panel that was ordered for it. And down here at the bottom, all of the sample is related to all of the patient and submitter information is related to the sample I have selected. So you can see the patient information and submitter information that we pre-completed is pre-completed here. The only remaining information that we need to complete is a second unique ID, which would be a unique identifier for the patient and the current clinic visit. The second required information would be the reason for test, so I'm going to complete the reason for test. The second tab to look at is the questions tab. And in the questions tab, you'll notice that there are no questions. The majority of the panels in the system do not have questions. However, there are panels in the system that will have questions, and if they do, the system will warn you that questions are available to be answered. The other tab where data is required to be entered is the requested samples and test tab. In this tab, complete the collection information regarding the sample for the test ordered. So I'm going to enter in the collection information, choose a sample source, and a sample type. The next thing I'll do is select a second sample that I created, and I can again go back to the accession information and enter in the visit information and the reason for test, and then click on the requested samples and tests and click on the collection information. And this will be urine and material. So now we have our 2 samples and all of the required information completed for both. Now to explain what the remaining 2 tabs are, the external tabs is the tab to let you know how the report will be sent back to you. So you can see that we have our 2 contacts that we selected, the reporting contact and the physician contact. The reporting contact has the send box checked, delivery method set to email. There are several different delivery methods that you can have: email, others fax, and the last is hard copy. A hard copy means that the report will be printed out at the laboratory and mailed directly back to the submitter. The Containers tab is the tab that shows you where this sample is being sent to and what tests were ordered. Again, the Containers tab and the Externals tab, Contacts tab, are read-only and for informational purposes only. We can print the sample labels by selecting the samples that we wish to print the sample labels for and clicking on Print Labels. The labels will be generated and available to print to your standard barcode printer. These samples are now ready to be sent to the laboratory, But before I send them to the laboratory, I'm going to show you some more examples of how to log in samples. So then this time, when I click on the Add button to create a new sample, I'm going to again select my OPH program, and I'm going to select Reproductive Health, and I'm going to order more than one panel. So I'm going to order CTGC and syphilis. And you'll notice again, the tests that are actually ordered are listed on the right. Then I'll click OK. I'm going to enter in my patient information. So I'm going to enter in a first and last name of the patient. The system will perform a search for me to select that patient and have the data completed for me. The next thing I need to do is enter in my submitter information, and I'm going to make sure I have my reporting and physician contact checked, that my reporting and physician contact are completed. And this time, I'm only going to create one sample containing both of those panels. So here's my sample and my two panels ordered. I can enter in, again, the visit information, and all of the information here in the Accession Information tab pertains to both panels ordered. So as I toggle between the two panels, you'll notice that the information in the Accession Information does not change. I can then proceed to the Requested Samples and Test tab. Based on the panel I have selected over here on the right, and the collection information. So now I'm going to click on syphilis and enter in the collection information for syphilis. So now the sample is ready to be sent to the laboratory. But if, after having logged in this sample, I realized that I actually wanted to order an additional panel for this patient, I can add that panel directly to this accession instead of creating a new sample. So if I needed to order an HIV as well, I can click on this edit link and click on Add Edit Panels and Add HIV and click OK. Click OK. Now you can see HIV is now included in the list of panels to order. So the only remaining thing that I need to do is select HIV and enter in my collection information. I can print the labels for all three of those panels just by clicking on Print Labels, and the labels will generate for me to print to my barcode printer. And here I have my CTGC, syphilis, HIV. So now the sample is ready to be sent to the laboratory. If I wanted to take a second draw of CTGC from a separate sample source, I can add CTGC again to this sample and create a new sample. So a panel cannot be added to one sample more than once. Now I could click on Add and create a brand new sample for that CTGC second source collection. Or click on the copy and order an additional copy of this current sample I have selected. So here's my second copy, and I will highlight that second copy. And you'll notice that it copied all of the information except the collection information. The accession information has copied as well. And it also copied the syphilis and HIV. Well, I can get rid of syphilis and HIV easily by clicking back on the Edit button, clicking on Add Edit Panels, and removing HIV and syphilis. So now I just have CTGC assigned, and I just need to enter in the collection information for this second draw. So now the second sample is ready to be sent to the laboratory. To further discuss how the copy functionality works, I'm going to log in another sample. This time, I'm going to choose the OPH program TB and order an AFB smear and culture. Sputum sample. I'm going to enter in my patient information and let the system search for a possible match and click OK. Then I'm going to enter in the submitter information. And again, I need a reporting and a physician contact. And I'm going to click OK. Now, if I am doing 3 sputum collections for the AFB smear, I can enter in my collection information for this first collection. And I'm going to enter in my date and time collected. And then I can make an additional 2 copies for my 2 additional sputum collections. Then, when we click on these additional copies, you'll notice that everything copies except the collection information. So I will need to complete that collection information for both remaining samples. And again, each sample has the accession information copied, so I only had to fill that out once. If I accidentally only ended up collecting 2 sputum samples, I can always delete a sample at any time while the sample is in Clinical Submitter Login by selecting that sample and clicking on the Delete button. That will get rid of the sample. As long as this sample exists in Clinical Submitter Login, you have complete control over that sample. You are allowed to edit the information, add panels, remove panels, delete the sample, whatever you need to do to get the correct information for that sample. Once the sample leaves Clinical Submitter Login, that sample is no longer in your control. If you need anything changed or anything corrected regarding the sample, you will need to contact the laboratory. To explain the remaining 2 links, the linked patient and unlinked patient, I'm going to log in another sample. Under Reproductive Health, the OPH program, I'm going to order a hepatitis C. I'm going to enter in my patient. Actually, I'm not going to enter in a patient. Let me think about it. Let's hit cancel. Information alone. I'm only going to enter in the submitter information. And I need a reporting and a physician contact. I click OK. Now you'll see that the patient information is completely blank because I did not complete it in the previous step. Go ahead and enter in the visit information. And I'm going to enter in my collection information while I'm thinking about it. And now, if I want to enter in the patient information and I know the patient exists in the database, I can click on Link Patient, and I will be prompted with a search to search for my patient based on any criteria that I know. I can use the count functionality to see if it will return any records. And I can click OK to be prompted with the list of available choices. Select my choice, OK, and the system will populate the patient information to the current sample I have selected. You'll notice also that once the patient has been linked to the sample, the first name and last name are highlighted in yellow and have the power to edit that information. If you realize that you assigned the wrong patient to the sample, you would need to first unlink that patient by clicking on Unlink Patient. Now this patient has been unlinked from this sample, and now I can link a new patient to that sample. So that is how the link and unlink functionality work for a sample. Now that we've entered in all of these samples, we are ready to send them to the laboratory. So the next topic that we're going to discuss is how to send samples to the laboratory and create manifests. To send samples to the laboratory, I can select any number of samples in the data grid. So I've selected all of the samples that I've just created, and I click on this Commit button. As long as all of the data for all of the samples I have selected, all the required data for all of the samples that I have selected have been completed, the dialog box that you see will appear. If you have not completed some of the required information for the samples you selected, the system will stop you and let you know what samples require data. Once I'm brought to this screen, I can assign samples to a manifest to send to the lab. To assign a sample to the manifest, I simply need to select that sample and click on Move Down to move that sample down to the lower data grid. The lower data grid is listing the samples that are assigned to the manifest. So I'm just going to assign all of the samples that I ordered for reproductive health to my manifest. And I'm going to leave these sputum samples to remain behind. Here are my samples that I've assigned to the manifest, and my sputum samples are the samples that are not assigned to the manifest. The next thing I'll do is I'll click OK. The system will prompt me with the package ID generated and the number of sessions that were assigned to that manifest. So a manifest and a package ID are the same. Once I click OK, the system will do three things. The first thing that it will do is it will regenerate the sample labels for you to print if you need to. The second thing that it will do is generate a shipping manifest for you to print and include with your samples. The third thing that it will do is generate the shipping label for you to print and affix to the bag that would contain your samples in your shipment. So here we see over here on the lower left-hand corner, our sample labels have been printed. Our shipping manifest is generated to the screen for each panel to the manifest. I can print this manifest by clicking on the print button. Once I'm done, I'll close that, and the next thing to print is the shipping label, which I would ship to the barcode printer that I'm using for my sample labels. Again, I can use the print button. Now close. Once I've closed it, I can open my sample labels if I need to. You'll notice that once I've sent the samples to the laboratory, those samples are no longer listed in the clinical submitter login screen. Samples that I didn't assign to the manifest are still here. So I can assign these samples to another manifest to show you the process again. So I'm going to highlight my two sputum samples, click on the commit button, and move those samples down to the manifest. Now if I need to remove a sample from the manifest, I would simply select that sample and move it back up. But again, I am assigning both of these samples to the manifest. And I'll click OK. And the system will tell me what the package ID and the number of samples assigned to the record. So we'll continue to do three things. It will generate the sample labels, the shipping manifest, and the shipping label. So here we have our shipping samples downloaded. Here's our shipping manifest. You'll notice it's just one page because we just assigned one panel. I can print the manifest, close, print the shipping label, close, and print my sample labels if I need to. So now we will return to the screen that is completely blank. We can continue to log in more samples or move on to the My Results review process. So the next thing that we're going to discuss, or the final thing that we're going to discuss, is how to look up results, reprint manifest, and reprint labels. So to look up results, I'm going to click back on the notifications menu and open up My Results Review by clicking on it. This will close Clinical Submitter Login and open up My Results Review. You'll notice that My Results Review looks exactly like Clinical Submitter Login, except the add, edit, and delete functions are gone, and we now have the search menu. When I click on the search menu, I will be prompted with a list of possible search criteria, and I can use any number of the search criteria. And if you'll recall, we still have these L buttons that allows us to do a like operator, so I don't necessarily have to remember all of the information. I can have it look for things containing. So if we look up a manifest that we've just created in the previous steps, and I can click count to determine if it will return any records, I can pull up the samples logged under that manifest by entering the last three digits. And you'll see in the data grid, we have the 5 samples that we created. You'll notice in the column, the package ID, they've all been assigned to the same package ID. I do not have to select all of the samples to print the manifest. I merely just have to select at least one sample on print manifest to regenerate the manifest. You'll see down here below is generating both the manifest. So here's our manifest and our shipping label to print. Discuss further, we can certainly reprint our sample labels anytime we want to just by clicking on print labels like we did in the previous application, Clinical Submitter Login. You'll also notice that these samples are set at a pre-log status. Pre-logged means that a sample has been sent to the laboratory, but the laboratory has not received the sample. You'll also be able to tell in the requested samples and tests, we now have these new fields that will tell you when the sample was received by the laboratory and at what temperature. Also notice that everything in all of these fields are set to a read-only mode, and you will not be able to change any of the information. If we continue further and search for more samples, and I'm going to search for all of the samples logged for a certain submitter, and click OK. So now you can see all of the samples listed. You can see the first sample that we have selected has a status of pre-logged. If I select another sample, this is another sample that we've just logged. I'm going to select another sample in the list. And here my sample, 1187, Over here, you can see there's a status set to active. Active means that the sample has been received in the laboratory and it is actively undergoing. If we click on requested samples and tests, you can see when that sample was received and at what temperature. If I proceed further and look at another sample, that you can again see the date and time received and the status is logged. A log status means that again, the sample was received by the laboratory and it is actively undergoing testing. So active and log statuses mean the same thing. If I proceed further to select another sample, you can see this sample has a status of done. Done means that the testing is completed and all of the results are within the normal range. I can click on Print Final Report, and if a final report is available, it will be downloaded for viewing. So here's my final report. Select another sample. You see this sample has two panels, one with a status of done and one with a status of OOS. OOS means out of specification or out of spec, which means the results are done, all of the testing is complete, and at least one result in that panel is outside of the normal range. I can click on Print Final Report, and as long as the review process is complete, the final reports will generate for viewing. So here we have our CTGC report and our syphilis report. So to further explain what the View Attachments link does, I'm going to put another sample. Here this sample is an AFB smear, and you can see the status is OOS, so the testing has completed. If I click on the Print Final Report, it will download the OPH report for this sample. And in this report, you'll notice that part of the results say, please refer to the attached identification and susceptibility results reported by the Texas Department of State Health Services TB Reference Laboratory. So anytime in a report you see the words refer to the attached, see attachments, anything to do with the word attachment, on View Attachments, you will be able to see those attachments. Clicked on View Attachments, and we can now see that there is a report, and if I click on View, the system will generate that report from the Texas Department of Health for viewing. So that is when View Attachments comes into play. That the My Results Review application works. This concludes the training for the LIMS version 11 clinical environment. Thank you for listening.